Good afternoon, Phil. Your call came through this time.
Okay, perfect. I just tried to go somewhere a bit quieter so it'll be less echoey.
Oh, you do definitely sound clearer.
Okay, great. Okay. I'm going to try putting you on speakerphone and see if that sounds okay. So 1 second. How's that for you?
There's still the echo, but do you?
Okay. All right. So the first question I have for you is just, what do you feel distinguishes you from the other mayoral candidates? In our email correspondence, you mentioned that you view yourself as being by far the most progressive candidate on the ballot, and I wonder just if you can elaborate a little bit on
that. I can only speak about me, really. I know myself most intimately, and we all know ourselves the best way. Quite frankly, progressive, in my opinion, means that you're thinking of things that are going to move society forward in a way that we can all live and thrive. And really, you may have seen through any of my promotional materials for my campaign that is my motto. My motto is, together we succeed, and that we need to ensure that we have the ability to live and thrive. And if we're not doing those things, if it's more towards a model that's towards capitalism, which it's odd to me as a city, because I believe that the purpose of the city is to take the public's investments, to protect the public's investments. And the greatest investment that the city has is its people, the people living and working and being in the city. And so if we're not taking the time to actually protect the public's rights and interests, what are we really doing with those dollars, that the city provides? So being progressive means being innovative. And have you seen my platform material and reviewed the information?
Yes, I have.
Have you seen a platform like that?
No, I haven't. I mean, there are other candidates that are advocating for things like free transit, but I haven't seen anything that's as sort of wide-ranging as your platform. Which talks about things like vertical gardens, talks about like sort of jointly owned property, those kinds of things. I haven't seen that in other platforms.
Right. And that is where I say being the most progressive, because I'm constantly looking for ways to ensure that we all have the ability to live and thrive. And that means constantly engaging with the public, constantly taking the public's perspective and amplifying the public's voice.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially putting the public in a position for success.
Yes. Okay. What does Toronto look like to you? Because in my experience, there are many versions of Toronto that people engage with, and so I wonder, what does the city look like to you? What are some of the issues that you see that need to be addressed? I mean, you outline it in your platform, but just maybe this is something that I'm going to be communicating to readers. So how is the city as you see it? What would you want other people to see that they don't necessarily get from mainstream media or from, typical sort of images of Toronto?
I believe that there are many things that I see about Toronto in its current iteration that many people actually see, and some not wanting to acknowledge. You see in my platform that the main issues that I raise are community wellness, housing and infrastructure and services. All of these things have an impact on society and are needed to be improved, if not initiated, because it's absent, because there's a lack of thereof. So, for example, under the community wellness heading, the reason why I created it is because this is fundamental to the way in which we move and be and commune within society. And if a society is unwell, much like with regards to our health, if we're unwell, we're sick. And if we're sick, we're not productive. If we're not productive, we're not contributing. And if we're not contributing, we're not thriving. All of these things go to the health of a society. And so the way in which our city has been planned, the way in which our city has been designed, the way in which our city has been exclusive, all starts with the foundation of white supremacy. And I'm not afraid to call out things for what they are. But when you look at what white supremacy has done or colonization has done for centuries in Canada against the very people who own this land and are dismissive, what more would it do to the very people who are paying taxes in the city, but to maintain those structures, to maintain the status quo of exclusion or protecting the interests of those that it wants to protect? And I see that there are too many people underrepresented in society. I see that Toronto could be actually a vibrant, thriving, world-class city, but we're not. We're not meeting the goals and standards that I would think should be part of world class. How can we rely on a transit system that's not reliable? There are people who come to our country and say to me, how is it that you guys have a sign up, you give a schedule, but buses don't show up? And it's the truth. It's a shock to me when people come from other countries and tell me this, because their expectation of Toronto is the expectation that I have too, that it should be coming and meeting on time. It works in their country. Why not here? And if I see this in my city, what it means to me directly and personally is that it's actually debilitating. It's debilitating to constantly fight and advocate for people's rights only to get incremental change just because the decision maker chooses that incremental change. Much more can happen in our city, but for some reason people choose not to. So I question why we constantly give the status quo platforms or access to making decisions on our behalf, constantly working against our own interests. Things can get done. It's just the people that we've put in place to act on those things are not acting on them to protect our rights and interests.
What do you say to folks who argue that progressive candidates don't necessarily have an eye for fiscal responsibility, and that these kinds of programs that are all encompassing and are working towards making a city more holistically healthy and accessible, these kinds of programs don't take into consideration the bottom line and run the risk of putting the city into bankruptcy or severe debt? What do you say to those kinds of critiques?
Well, first of all, I haven't had that critique. And when I've been campaigning, nobody's saying that, because I explain how we can get these things done. So I'm not familiar with that critique. Perhaps they're talking to a candidate that maybe hasn't thought through their plan. I don't know. So I can't address a critique that I'm not familiar with. But wholly, the city has a lot of money. And the money that we use is misspent or used in a way that is not benefiting the members of the public, members who actually live in it and pay into it. And when you actually look into city dollars, for example, let's look at Presto. We have paid over $288 million just to install Presto gates alone. And that's for just the gates that we have right now. They're not even completely installed. And those gates, as you're aware, have not been working. So add to that the cost of repair and inefficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. The cost is even more than the $288 million, but that's just a starting figure because it's in a report from TTC. You think about that when I talk about fare free transit. And to think that the amount of money that we get from the federal government, provincial government, and the taxes that we pay directly as citizens, and that's everybody, because I think sometimes people are dismissive of people who are homeless or people who they consider to be poor as not being people who pay taxes. Everyone pays taxes, whether it be on your tax income tax statement or when you go to the store to shop. Everybody pays taxes. So because of those taxes, we should be able to benefit from services that we are paying for. So why is it that we're paying an extra amount on something that's not even providing us the services that we expect? It boggles my mind. So you think about breaking down all those barriers, removing the Presto gates, removing the transit police, removing the people who police enforcement, removing the obstacles that allows people people access to travel here and there. And look what we create. We create actually investments in community where we build on community wellness. We give people access to things that they should be entitled to, quite frankly, to be able to move and thrive. And we actually save money and can reinvest the money saved into creating and ensuring that we have more accessible transit, that are we hire locally, and that is, in my opinion, as I indicate on my model, that we hire in a way that we can hire seniors, people with disabilities, to be ambassadors within the TTC for the things that we actually remove. So if you take away all those fare booths and all those systems that need to be maintained and monitored, we can actually have people within those systems that are helping people, not behind plexiglass, but in person, to direct them where they need direction or assistance. We can actually have a greater flow and movement of people. And what that actually ends up doing is allows our economy to grow, because people will not have to think about one more thing that they have to calculate just to go from point A to B. They don't have to think about one thing and determine whether or not they can go and visit someone or not, or socialize or move. It really enhances, we constantly only look at the financial impact. We don't look at the wellness impact. I don't know if you can hear me still, because I can hear some beepings and...
Yeah, sorry, just like I can hear you though, yes.
Oh, okay.
On a similar note, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about policing, because I noticed in your platform, there was talk of training first responders and police in such a way that they I guess I don't want to sort of put words into your mouth, but basically not perpetuating harm, and are also in harassment-free environments, etc. And I'm just wondering if you can expand on the role of policing in the city, because, the policing is a very contentious issue in the city. There are people who have had very negative impacts with policing, but there are also people who are have very strong positive feelings about the police. And so I'm just wondering how policing sort of fits into your platform.
So let's look at the picture as anyone who is employed by the public. So people who are elected are employed by the public, and people who are employed through the City of Toronto are employed by the public. The reality is the public is the boss. That means every person who lives in Toronto is the boss of me when I'm elected, is the boss of every councillor, is the boss of every person working for the City of Toronto. And in that respect, my observations are that sometimes there's a way of thinking and behavior and conduct that is not complementary to how someone who's being paid to provide a service is responding to the public. I think all across the board, there are certain competencies that are lacking, and those competencies need to be trained or shared or taught within all city areas. So everyone employed through the City of Toronto, the employees, the agencies, and elected representatives. There are cultural competencies lacking. There are compassion competencies lacking, and there are community wellness competencies lacking. Oftentimes, these are excluded from policy making, which hence leads to breaches of the AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, breaches of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, also known as the Charter, breaches of the Human Rights Code, also known as the Code. Oftentimes, there are breaches of these things because people are not taught to do the right thing. And even when people are taught to do the right thing, they don't for some reason. And oftentimes with the police, that keeps coming up as contentious issues, comes back to what we talked about earlier, the foundations of white supremacy, and some people thinking that they can use behaviors because they're entitled to those behaviors, not only because of their skin color, but also now because they have a badge and can wield it as they will. When you're asking me to speak specifically to the police, I'm wondering, have you asked other candidates who are not Black to speak to those issues?
So far the only candidates that I've spoken to you, and I've spoken to Saron Gebrselassie.
Yes.
And so those are the only two people that I've spoken to, and in both cases I have asked questions about policing, but I am working on interviews with other candidates who aren't Black, and I will be asking them about policing as well.
Yes. So, and you may know, because you and I have been at the Police Services Board advocating on behalf of the public. It shouldn't be, in my opinion, I keep saying this is where we go back to, why do people continue to maintain the status quo? Right now, 2 mayoral candidates out of the 35 mayoral candidates are being amplified by the establishment. And the public has to ask itself, why is it that 2 of these candidates are being amplified in the way that they've been amplified? And in my opinion, that's because they're the status quo. They maintain the status quo. They don't challenge the status quo. They've never been in the struggle. Have you ever seen any of those 2 candidates in the struggle? So the reality is, the only reason why you may have seen John Tory at the Police Services Board is because he was elected in a period of time where people elected him because they did that because of what they didn't want. Not because they wanted him, but because of what they didn't want. And the reason why he's at the Police Services Board meetings is only because he's on the board. Otherwise, has he ever been amongst the people, advocating with the people for the protection and interests of the people? Has, what's her name? I can't remember her name right now, but the woman who's the other person who's the candidate.
Jennifer Keith-Matt.
Thank you. Have you ever seen her advocating on behalf of the public or in the struggle? So what I ask the public is, why do you choose to maintain the status quo, what the establishment feeds to you, when you know better? Why do you continue to act against your own interests? And in my opinion, if I am constantly having to fight for people's rights when it comes to policing, I'm not fighting because I just want to fight. I fight or advocate because there's an actual problem. I don't like wasting my time, energy, and my body. I'm not well to begin with because I have injuries. But I take these things on because there's just no way that I can sit back at injustice. So when we elect progressive candidates such as myself, that's where we'll see the change. For all those people talking about fiscal irresponsibility, if you elect a progressive person, when has that happened? Right? So the rhetoric is out there, but it's never happened. We've never elected a Black female mayoral candidate, ever. So what kind of rhetoric is somebody going to use about that? But what we do know is that Black women are strong, Black women are bold, Black women are dynamic, and Black women stand up to stuff. That's what we know. We know that we don't back down, and more specifically, I don't back down. Everyone has seen that when I was more recently sexually assaulted by Toronto police officer Jamie Party at police headquarters at the reception desk. And even after being choked and my breasts grabbed and being thrown and slammed to the ground, and I'm injured and blood is in my mouth, even after that, I persevered and went to speak to the issue that I showed up to speak on behalf of the public about, and that was the barriers at the front entrance, in addition to a number of other things. We don't give up. We'll be crawling with our finger if we need to protect the public's rights and interests. So this is why I don't understand the sophistry that is spewed by these status quo candidates, and that they expect you to side with them when they've done nothing for you. They've never given their life to you to protect your rights. And coming back to policing, things have to change. It only continues to amplify for the worse and not for the better. And when I speak to officers directly about these very things, they agree with me. They agree with me. So what's the problem? And the problem is that we allow certain things to go on. In particular, that Police Services Board is a mess. So we need to get that board in order. We need to remind the board what it needs to be for the public's interests, and that it's not a co-signer of anything the police wants to do. And more importantly, now that it appears that the provincial government wants to dictate what we should be doing and not be doing, I am definitely the mayoral candidate to stand up to someone like Premier Doug Ford. Premier Doug Ford remembers me from the 2014 municipal election. He remembers when I asked him to pass me the mic and he said to me, just go ahead and grab it. And I said, I will not grab it. You will hand it to me. And he did. And he remembers that I was advocating for the people. If anybody's of the people, it's me. And so where I see someone being able to advance our rights and protect our interests, where I don't see that now, that's why I run. That's why I fight. That's why I advocate. That's why I persevere. People are so loved that they should be loved and feel loved. And I think love is lacking in the way we conduct ourselves to ensure that we all have the ability to live and thrive. We're not acting in love. We're not acting with compassion. We're not acting with common sense. And at some point, things are going to break if we continue the way that we continue. And quite frankly, many people believe that things are already broken. I'm one of them.
I'm almost out of time for this interview, but I'm just wondering if you have any sort of final thoughts that you want to add. And also just, I'm wondering about your path to victory as you see it. Who are some of the key groups, or what do you think your path to victory is, given that you and the other candidates haven't received the same coverage as John Tory and Jennifer Keesmaat? As you said, there are two candidates there being amplified at a different level than the rest of the candidates.
No, respectfully, I said there are two status quo candidates being amplified. Yes, that's key.
Yeah, okay, great point of clarification. So yeah, if you can just tell me what you think your path to victory is.
So are you saying PATH?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said PAST at first, and then I realized, no, I think you're saying path to victory. So what I want to say with regards to the citizens of Toronto, everyone living in Toronto, I want to say that possibilities are available to our ability to live and thrive. We have the ability with our vote to elect what we want. A victory in that is the actual choosing what we want and not going with the status quo. A path to victory is recognizing that it's 2018 and we should be living in an accessible city. And why is it that our city is still inaccessible? Why is road infrastructure still unsafe? Why do we have pockets of communities that are in serious poverty and situations of homelessness when this is 2018 and we're in Toronto, one of the richest cities in North America? What I have to say about that is that these determinations really is where the people can be empowered to know it is their voice, it is their vote, it is their act to choose what they want for this city and for others that can make that path of victory clear. It is together that we succeed. There's no other way that we're going to do these things but together. And so, barring any fact, and by the way, I'm wondering if you've even looked into this, whether or not the election campaign, the transmitting, the machines that transmit the votes, whether those machines are in any way affiliated with John Tory and or Rogers, because in 2014, the system that actually transmitted the votes was owned by Rogers, which I brought to court because, in my opinion, that's a conflict of interest. I haven't received a response from the Elections Toronto office, which I'm following up on, and they're a bit upset that I'm asking them about that, but we have a right to know which company is being used to transmit the votes on election. And I'm curious whether or not that same company was the same company that transmitted the votes for the provincial election. So put that to your readers, because no other journalist is talking about that despite it being raised. And I'm curious why we don't look into the actual systems that are in place that transmit votes. I want to know whether or not those systems that transmit the votes are related to John Tory or affiliated to with Rogers in any way. The city of Toronto, Elections Toronto confirmed that it's not Rogers' system, but they didn't confirm or deny that the system being used is affiliated with Rogers. Rogers has many subsidiaries that it owns and under different names. So I want to know, and the people of Toronto should know that as well. Are their votes going in the way that they want it to go in? And if they are, I would say to people, vote ONNE Renée on election day. A vote for me becomes a voice for you. And in order to ensure that we all have the ability to live and thrive, I'm asking the citizens of Toronto to vote ONNE Renée on election day, and more importantly, to vote early. Early voting takes place on October 10th to 14th, and it's important to get out early to vote, and it's important to bring others and encourage others to go and vote. This election is decided by the people of Toronto, barring any kind of suspicious activities with transmitting machines. But if we can verify who's transmitting the votes and feel comfortable as a city that, our votes went through, then ultimately it depends on the citizens and residents of Toronto that who they elect as their representative, who is there to inspire them, who is there to fight and advocate on their behalf, who is there to ensure that they have the ability to live and thrive. Together, we succeed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, ONNE Renée.
So my first name is Dion, you know that, right? Because I know you're always saying both my names, and I thought it was cute, but then I thought maybe it's because I wrote to you saying how my name is spelled and la 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 la. But yes, so my first name is Dion, as you know.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dion. I really appreciate it. I'm going to draft the piece up this weekend, and then I might email you if I need any clarification on anything, because it is very important to me to make sure that everything's just that everything is done properly. So I will email you if I have if I need any clarification. But otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to be interviewed.
Well, thank you for taking the time to inquire, because I think that's what people should always do, is have an inquiry mind about what's going on. But more importantly, that you took the time to also amplify my voice, Phil, in a way that equity should do and fairness should do. So thank you for that. Have you produced any of the articles yet?
The first one's coming out next week, and then yours will come out probably the week after.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, so I can send it to you beforehand if you want.
Oh, it's up to you. Do you?
Okay.
So thanks for your time, Phil.
Thank you so much, Dion.
All right. And do you have my picture? Like, how are you putting the article out?
So actually, if you could send me, if you have any visuals that you could send, that would be great. Because otherwise, the editorial team will just track something down on the internet, existing photos, or they would probably end up emailing me to ask you anyway. So if you can send me, if you have anything that you'd like, any visuals that you'd like to be put on the website, just if you could send them to me, that'd be great.
Sorry, is this a digital article then? Well, that's what Rabble is. But what I mean by that is, are you putting a number of things? Because I would love my platform cards as you see them in my attachments to be included.
Okay. Let me talk to the editor and see if we can make that happen. I'll see. That would be great. Also, I'll talk to them and ask them about that.
And I will ask that you will allow me to give you the amended ones, because I have on there the original dates for the early voting, which was 6th to 14th. And because of Bill 5, that changed now to 10 to 14. So I need to be able to amend those cards. And so if you allow me to give you the amended one, when you email me, if you have any questions, when do you actually get it in by the way?
I'm sending it in Monday morning.
Okay. So if you allow me to give you the amended version without the incorrect information, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, we'll definitely do that.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, thanks a lot, Dion.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Ciao for now.
Okay.
Bye-bye.